Good afternoon, all. My name is Margarita Aswani. I'm the Chief of Party of the USAID-funded Feed the Future Nigeria Rural Resilience Activity. It is my greatest pleasure to welcome you all today to this short webinar, where my colleagues and I will take you through lessons learned during the implementation of the COVID-19 Mitigation Response Program. We will also share with you results achieved to date and provide an opportunity for you to hear directly from participants in the program. We have ensured adequate time for Q&A at the end of the presentations, but if you do have a question as we are presenting, please post it in the chat and we will address it. With me today are Mr. Tafiranika Mufanochoya, the Activities Cash Assistance Director, who successfully led the cash team to deliver on every component of the program in a time frame of less than 8 months, and Mr. Jameson Onekalit, Mercy Corps Nigeria Cash and Food Security Advisor, who kicked off the program back in July, providing invaluable advice that led to the successes we will share with you today. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to USAID and our AOR, Dr. Samba Kawa, who entrusted us and supported us to deliver this very critical cash assistance to help markets and households to recover from the impact of COVID-19. I also wish to thank all the Feed the Future activities who worked diligently with our team to ensure we were able to work in new locations where we did not have an established presence, and to deliver the cash assistance in the hands of farmers and micro-enterprises within the shortest amount of time possible, as well as other donors such as GIZ and the European Union, who collaborated with us by providing us lists of people in the Northeast that had been trained and could use this cash assistance to kickstart their businesses. We're also deeply grateful to all the state governments of Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, Gombe, Kebbi, Niger, Benue, and Ebonyi for their support, guidance, and encouragement, as well as the community leaders in those states who helped us to ensure that the most vulnerable people received support. Finally, I wish to thank the entire Rural Resilience team, the dedicated officers who worked across 8 field locations to ensure that the program was achieved on time and within the budget and scope that we presented to USAID last year. I'm deeply grateful for your contributions, and I wish to thank the Mercy Corps Nigeria family, who piled in support and who worked long days and weekends and during the holidays to ensure that we delivered on our promise. Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. In July 2020, the activity conducted a rapid COVID-19 market assessment to facilitate startup activities in a highly unpredictable context. Drawing on Mercy Corps' Market Systems Resilience Measurement Framework, the activity was able to gather information about shocks that had affected markets and constraints faced by households and market actors as a result of COVID-19. At the household level, our findings indicated that vulnerable households had become extremely food insecure. 91% of our respondents indicated that although shops were open in line with government restrictions, the prices of all products had increased, while tubers, grains, cereals, which are all staple products of the Nigerian diet, became unavailable during the pandemic. As a result of COVID-19 and associated restrictions, households' ability to work and to farm became extremely limited. For the most part, households sold productive assets, farm implements, stored grains and seeds, and kept children out of school and consumed less food to manage the rising cost of living. During the assessment, off-takers and processors reported reduced purchasing power and the halt of exchange of agricultural raw materials. Off-takers often exchange agricultural inputs for farmers' produce, effectively functioning as intermediary input suppliers. This practice ended during the COVID-19 lockdown, and many off-takers and processors had limited liquidity to purchase farmers' goods for cash. To minimize costs, many companies laid off employees and further reduced expenditure which further limited their output. These shocks were further constrained by the operations of the financial service providers, who demonstrated reduced risk appetite due to fear of default and willingness and capacity to grant credit and loans. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Previous slide. Thank you, this is fine. In December 2020, the US government, having recognized the significant impact that COVID-19 had made on the agri sector in Nigeria, approached the rural resilience activity to gauge willingness to respond within a short time by implementing the COVID-19 Mitigation Response program. We put together a proposal to deliver well-targeted cash and capital support to participants in targeted communities to prevent further backsliding and economic devastation due to the secondary impacts of COVID-19 shocks and stresses. We advised that within 9 months, we would provide cash assistance to 45,000 farmers, of which 50% would be women and 20% would be youth. We confirmed that we could provide cash assistance and skills training to 2,500 existing microenterprises and support to establish 2,500 new microenterprises and provide them with business and financial management training. We also advised that we could provide cash grants to 50 small and medium firms, specifically agro-input companies, to enable them to replenish their inventory and hire back staff, and also provide inputs to farmers on credit. Finally, to support the critical processing sector in Nigeria, we confirmed that we could provide in-kind capital support to women cowpea processors to enable them to expand their businesses and process higher amounts of cowpea flour to supply the market. We will now pause for a few minutes to play some videos of our participants who will tell you their stories of how the cash grant changed their lives. Thank you.
Our community here in Jambutu, what we are facing is lack of financial, as the condition we are now facing in the country. Some of us cannot able to feed themselves. And by doing this, that the Mercy Corps help us, I have seen the achievement and the improvement. Their body has changed.
I buy
a bag of rice to sell weekly. I also sell maize, and I'm rearing 2 goats. Initially, my children were not in school. They used to have sachet water, but now they attend the government primary school here in Jambutu. I get about 5,000 naira profit weekly after selling these grains. This 5,000 naira is after deducting the money for feeding and other household needs. I will be investing this profit to scale up my business.
It gladdens my heart to see my children attending school instead of hawking on the streets. I am so happy. I have 2 goats I poured, a doe and its kid, worth 25,000 naira. I'm optimistic that the small ruminant business would be profitable too. The doe is even pregnant at the moment.
My name is Mariam Bayaye. I live in Jambutu community. I received the intervention from Mercy Corps and I am grateful. I used it to scale up my cap knitting business. Now, I do not only sell the caps, I also sell the threads used for knitting the caps.
I'm Zakaria Taiwa from Michika local government. I reside in Jambutu, an IDP. I'm living with my children there. I have about 6 children that I'm living with. Almost all are in school. And here is the business that I'm doing. Out of the money that Mexico sent unto me December, out of it I made this business whereby I spent almost 50-something thousand on this. And here with my children is where I'm depending now. Before we get that money, actually to feed, we are not getting it easy. But we thank God, as I started this business now, I'm able to help them in school, to pay my house rent, and to feed them.
Gaskiya ban san wani irin godiyan da zan yi ma mutanen America da USAID da Mexico ba don sun yi mini, ban san wani baki zan gode musu da shi ba, sai da in ce na gode musu buhu na gode don sun yi mini.
I appreciate USAID, the American people, the Mexicans for the help they are sent to me. May God continue to help them as they are helping we IDPs.
I thank the people of USAID and American people, at the same time with Mexicans, for the help they render us here in my community.
Thank you very much. Can I get the next slide up, please? The COVID-19 Mitigation Response Program is set to close out in 4 days. As of last week, we have reached a total of 44,552 participants. Specifically, 40,076 farmers have been reached to date, of which 56% were women. In total, 15,111 youth were reached, of which 58% were young women. 4,479 micro-enterprises have been supported as of last week, of which 63% were women-owned. 8% of all participants in the program were internally displaced persons. To date, 30 small and medium enterprises were supported with grants to replenish their inventories and provide inputs into markets in time for wet season farming. And through collaboration with the private sector, nearly 20,000 new bank accounts were opened. This has increased financial inclusion in the region and will provide participants with further opportunities to access loans and credit in the future. To support women copy processors, we began a process last November where we reached out to each of the 40 processors individually to ascertain exactly which type of equipment they needed. This was to ensure that they were involved in the decision making and that the equipment that was supplied was according to their individual needs and capacity, ensuring that the equipment provided would enable the women to continue to operate well beyond the life of the program. We know that we will reach the program targets by the end of March. However, as we have secured some savings by providing cash assistance directly through bank accounts rather than using third-party financial service providers, we will be able to provide cash assistance to over 2,000 additional farmers, enabling us to exceed our targets. If you do have any questions, please post them in the chat or kindly hold off until the end of the presentation. I will now turn over to Taffy, who will present our approach as well as the findings from the post-distribution monitoring survey. Taffy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Margarita. My name is Tafreni Kamfanachia, and I'm Mexico's RRA Cash Assistance Director based in Abuja. So in terms of the approach that Mexico applied in this, the COVID-19 mitigation grant, through supporting market resilience to COVID-19, the project focused on livelihoods recovery of vulnerable populations and businesses. The project assisted Feed the Future rural resilience participants who were part of a longer term program. And the whole idea was to actually create the effect of layering while it's also helping COVID affected households. So the delivery of the COVID-19 mitigation grant used an MSD approach, and the implementation layered the COVID-19, the RRA's activity in selected geographical spaces. The targeting of participants were in the Beiji states, that is Borno, Adamawa, Yobe, and Gombe. And then also the program extended to other non-RRA states, but these are also Feed the Future states. These include Ebonyi, Benue, Kebbi, and Niger states, including the FCT. And AgInvest and AgExtension played a very critical role in supporting us create access to the FTF participants in these areas. The project, the delivery of the cash used labeled cash transfers with the objective of aiding agriculture-based and non-agriculture-based livelihoods. There was also a capital grant that was extended to assist lead firms who work in providing goods and services to smallholder farmers. Some of the targeted firms included those in the Safety Ambassador programs run by Mexico, as well as those utilizing a market-based exchange and service provision to smallholder farmers that is being implemented by AgExtension in the states I mentioned earlier. After much consideration, the distribution of cash to farmers, micro enterprises, and lead firms was done utilizing internal finance mechanisms. And then the participants' information was collected from the field and verified by our MIS teams, and then forwarded to finance using Mexico or Nigeria's internal checks and balances to facilitate payment. I'm sure you already heard Margarita speak earlier to the savings that we managed to do that to make us reach an additional 2,114 participants. Right, so we'll go on to the slide that talks about the PDM as well as the achievements that we had. So we had an average of about US $105 that was invested in business activities by women, while men invested about $107 and $102, sorry. And this resultantly stimulated over a turnover of over 61 million US dollars in the period. And then up to 69% of the total participants served were actually women, and the youths constituted 12%. And 34% of the participants who received money used this for food, while an additional 18% of the participants used this for school fees. 17% of the participants also reported using their money for purchase of livestock, and another 8% invested their monies in agro inputs. Another 12% of the participants also used their cash transfers to start or grow their businesses. So there was quite a lot of investment of the money in regenerating additional income. I think it speaks to the idea that we gave a labeled cash transfer that was speaking to income generating activities as well. Then the market systems approach was very instrumental in getting financial service providers to run our outreach programs and facilitate the opening of bank accounts. So what the program just did was to inform financial service institutions of the opportunities that lay ahead in terms of participants who would need bank accounts. And we saw various financial institutions actually extending their services to communities to get beneficiaries or participants register and open bank accounts. The COVID-19 mitigation grant was also integrated into 6 other RRA interventions, right? These include the producer organization support, food processors, micro enterprise support, women economic empowerment, youth economic empowerment, and access to formal financial markets. An example of how farmers under the access to formal financial markets were assisted is that up to 80% of their cash transfer, which is 62,500 naira or 150 US dollars, was actually used as equity to gain additional funding from financial institution that was all amounting to 602 US dollars per hectare. So you see the use of the cash was actually used to propagate or actually encourage the growth of business, and also using a clearly defined market approach where now we have smallholder farmers getting loans and able to access getting bank accounts and able to access loans and grow their agricultural activities. And then there was also strengthened linkages and integration of interventions. For example, the women cowpea processors that Margarita earlier referred to have actually been linked up to with the food processing intervention. And these women are now receiving capacity support on the identification of gaps in their operations in terms of food handling. They are also going through the process of registration as certified food processors. They are receiving training on food fortification, especially with vitamin A fortifications. So, you know, all these are the benefits that we are seeing from a layering approach. And we expect that as the program comes to an end, we'll be able to have exit strategy that actually creates stronger linkages between the existing RRA interventions and these that we have. And then at the end of it all, women were the major winners of this, because if we look at the figures, we have about 18,068 women, 18,068 women who were supported to open bank accounts, and we have 24,867 women farmers who received an amount equaling 4.7 million US dollars in cash assistance. Also, women-owned micro enterprises managed to receive up to 268,546, and all this money was always followed up with trainings that were linked to businesses, marketing, and other financial literacy services. So we actually had the deliberate targeting of RRA and FTF participants so that there is continuity in programming even after the end of this 10-month COVID mitigation grant, which is officially known as supporting market resilience to COVID-19 shocks. Thank you very much. I'll wait for questions at the end of the presentation. Next.
Thank you, Tafi. Just to advise, so those figures will be further updated. Those figures that Tafi presented are from the PDM report, and we've since done additional cash transfers. Now I'd like to call Jameson. I can see Jameson is on and ready to discuss some of the lessons learned. Thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. Now is the time to deep dive into some of the key lessons that we learned over the past 8 months with the cash top-up. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today from wherever part of the world you are in. My name is Jameson Onefalit. I am the Country Cash and Food Security Advisor for Mexico, Nigeria, based here in Northeast, in Borno State, my degree. As my colleagues have already mentioned, I was part of the team that helped with setting up the program at the beginning and having regular check-ins to ensure that we are following the cash minimum standards and have the standard operating procedures to guide in the implementation. So within these few minutes, allow me to quickly share with you some of the key learnings from the last 8 months of the program implementation across the different geographical locations that earlier on has been mentioned by my colleagues. What were some of the key learnings, lessons that we learned over the last 8 months? First, the program was very intentional in ensuring that we help the participants to enable them open up a bank account. This was very, very intentional because we wanted to make sure all the monies are sent through the beneficiaries' account. We were able to build relationships and partnerships that was created between Mexico Rural Resilience Activity and then the different commercial banks in Nigeria. So financial service providers demonstrated flexibility in terms of ensuring that participants are banked. This came with added pressure because this is not something that they were doing before, and within a short time of period to expand their scope and staffing structure to meet the urgent needs of the program from the inception. This requires cash cost-efficient response to COVID-19, given the short period of the program in implementation. Given the context and the enabling environment with the existing infrastructure, we are able to do a direct cash transfer to participants' account. So this led to significant savings using Mexico Nigeria expertise. I know Margarita had already mentioned that. So there was quite a number of savings that we made from that, and that increased on the number of participants to be supported than the original one that was targeted. It's important to note that cash is king. The level cash transfer enabled the participants to make their own choices on when to make withdrawals because the money is directly sent to them. So they can plan on when they can make withdrawals from their accounts, have a joint household decision making on the utilization of cash, and very importantly, promoting dignity of people in crisis. We also strengthen resilience capacity of households with an hypothesis that strengthening resilience capacity is imperative in reducing vulnerabilities of people and the economy of northeastern Nigeria to shocks and stresses. Rural resilience activity targets 3 closely overlapping resilience capacity dimensions. Key to mention are absorptive, adaptive, and transformative capacities. For the benefits of everyone, and especially those who might not understand the differences of these dimensions, allow me to break down these definitions quite briefly. When we say absorptive capacity, it's about ensuring stability. It aims to prevent or limit the negative impact of shocks on individuals or households, communities, businesses, and the local economy. Adaptive capacity is about making appropriate changes in order to better manage or adjust to changing situations. And then finally, the transformative capacity is about fundamental changes in the deep structures that cause or increase vulnerability and risk as well as how risk is shared within societies and the global community. So what have we learned from this? To this end, the activity used the COVID cash response to enhance 2 out of the 3 of the capacities. This is to say we targeted absorptive and adaptive capacities of individuals, businesses, markets, and the economy. Next slide, please. COVID-19 Mitigation Response Program is a vehicle for collaboration and impact. We realized that we cannot work in isolation, so we collaborated with other USAID Feed the Future programs, and then EU and GIZ within Nigeria to expand our scope and reach more participants. We identified value add in this collaboration and ensure that we work as a team within the given time. Also important to note that any program cannot succeed without the buy-in of stakeholders, and particularly not in a complex and volatile place like the Northeast Nigeria. So the different stakeholders from the community structures, the local governments, at states, and then at the federal capital territory, we are part and parcel of the program from the beginning. So we couldn't carry out any activity without making any consultations with the different stakeholders. We can confirm that multi-stakeholder engagement and sensitization led to effective participation. Program approach as a nexus of humanitarian and market system development is a catalyst for achieving the activities milestones. The cash transfers are helping participants to become active players in the Northeast market through investment in small businesses, expansion of existing businesses, and diversification into new businesses, as well as part of the cash used for food purchase to meet the immediate household food needs. And to crowd it up, we use community accountability and reporting mechanisms. So we cannot underestimate the importance of beneficiaries' feedback into our programs, and rural resilience cash grants was no exception. We ensured that we set up a robust feedback channels that is able to collect and respond to needs as and when we receive them. This strengthened the trust and build a relationship between the program and the participants. Thank you everyone for listening, and in the spirit of welcoming feedbacks, we want to hear from you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jameson. So that concludes our presentations. We would be happy to take questions now. I'm seeing one question already in the chat. I'll just read it out. It's from Ms. Danielle, and then I'll be looking out for hands. The first question is, what challenges are you noticing among participants who receive cash transfers and who are participating in the market systems development interventions in terms of their expectations, given that MSD interventions are indirect, facilitative, and impact is not immediate or direct? And do we expect this to be a challenge? And then the second question, so I'll ask, actually, if we have John Rachkar on the call, I'll ask Ayo to unmute him to answer that question. And the second question is, for those who open bank accounts, what are the barriers or enablers to continuing to use the bank accounts for formal services? And I'll ask if Mark is on the call, he can answer after John. Otherwise, we'll get John to take both of those answers. Thank you. Can we unmute John?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, John. If you can please take those two questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Margarita. I think just to go straight on the first question, in terms of challenges, we didn't quite see this as a challenge. Yes, we are working on a market systems development program, And the cash, on the contrary, actually empowered people to participate more. That meant they were now given the agency to choose who could supply them with the necessary agricultural inputs. They now had the resources that could allow them to handle, the trading activities that they needed to take their grains to the market. They could pay for their transport services and so on and so forth. So we saw more positive than negative challenges that could come out of this cash. Whereas as an activity, we were kind of thinking that this could be distortionary in a way. On the contrary, it actually enabled people to participate better in various markets. In any case, the cash actually yielded more benefits to the various market systems that we are working on to support and to strengthen. That would be my response on the first one. Mark, are you there? Maybe Mark is there to take on the question on the banks.
Why don't you go ahead, John?
All right. Daniel, the second question on the bank account, looking at the barriers or the enablers for the people to continue using the bank account. I think this is something that we are happy to keep following through. To the most part, 44% of the people who received cash, let me say that again, 44% of the people who received cash actually opened new bank accounts. And it's something that we are keen to see what would happen from this, because this is a large number. 44% is quite huge. 44% of 45,000 people is quite a large number. That's almost 20,000 new bank accounts that have been opened. Again, we are beginning to see interest from the various financial institutions to serve the communities, and we're happy to follow this through to see over time whether people would continue using these bank accounts. But like I said, this has generated significant volume of interest from the various financial institutions to really make sure that their agent network or the point of sale machines are continuing to work. Now, the beauty with having a bank account is that each time you have an account to your name, any small amount of money that you would have in your household gives you the opportunity to probably go and deposit it there and pick it up later. We have seen this happen in other places as well, and we're happy to see how this could also work in our context. Thank you, Anova.
Thank you, John. And I know that Mark is now able to respond, and perhaps, Mark, you can also describe some of the background of what did it take to get to the point where the commercial banks wanted to come to the Northeast and were so willing to engage some of the activities that we did before in order for them to be willing to invest. Thank you. Do we have Mark on the line?
Hi, Margarita.
Hello. Go ahead, Taffy.
So I think in terms of the banks, it is quite a space where we also want to learn over time what will happen. But one of the anticipations that we have is that banks are driven by market forces, and the fact that they have clients with them, they can actually also provide services that can stimulate further usage of those bank accounts. And he mentioned that the cash transfers have been used as equity to actually access loans, right? So people are using about 150 US dollars to access about 600 US dollars in loans. So the moment farmers get a loan, this is now the beginning of a long-term relationship between the participants and the bank. And this is exactly the intention that RRA has, that we step aside as Mexico, and then the communities and the market players, they start to engage. So you appreciate that financial inclusion is a whole longer continuum than just opening a bank account, but at least the bank account is the start of, of a process that will actually lead to financial inclusion and also improved economic participation of the target population. So we shall continue studying, and as though besides the program finishing in March, it is also on the backdrop that it's been implemented alongside a 5-year program that is in its 3rd year. So we have time for learnings. Thank you.
Taffy, there's a question in the chat about, are you aware what were the factors that encouraged our participants to engage with the banks?
So the issue really is the participants in terms of choosing their banks. It was more personal, and some of them it was about accessibility, and some of them it was really about the conditions of the banks. So you will notice that here in Nigeria, for instance, for one to have a bank account, they must have what they call a biometric verification number, which is generated after a biometric registration process. So certain players within the financial service sector were able to provide those right at the grassroots. Those also ended up getting quite a significant number of the population. Others were not, they were just raising awareness of their products and asking people to move to their banks. So the more creative financial institutions actually ended up walking away with a bigger share of that market. But in terms of other learnings on that, we will share as we go, but in the interim, we can confidently say that. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is for Taffy, both for you and John. Did the post-distribution monitoring or any of our current field work show that participants are concerned about current food shocks or future shocks, given that we're seeing rising prices of agro inputs, such as fertilizer, and then also the rising price of fuel? Either you or John can take that question. Thank you.
John, you can go first.
Thank you. Thank you, Margarita, for the question. And I think this is a big concern, not only to the project participants, but also for those in the development space. This increase in prices of commodities, both food commodities and also agricultural inputs, is likely to really put all of us on the drawing board to see how do we, navigate through and around these shocks that are coming. Whereas, the cash already handled the issues of the past, we are seeing new dynamics, new phenomena that is really making all of us to think, not only people in the development space, but also the project participants are thinking, what next? How do we handle it? Today, we are seeing an increase, an astronomical increase in the prices of fertilizers, an increase in the prices of other agricultural inputs like seed. We're seeing challenges of people to move their grains from one point to the other because of lack of fuel and others. We're seeing, global dynamics also affecting important food commodities like wheat. The price has now gone up almost by 100%. We're seeing the price of fuel and all of these other things that tend to drive cost of transaction really high. All that will be translated into some new form of shocks and stress that is concerning absolutely to the project participants, but also for governments and also for us in the development space. These are things that I would advise that we all watch, keep our eyes very keenly to see. I know of traders who are unable to move their commodities from their warehouses to the marketplace because, yes, they have the trucks and they don't have fuel. I know of traders who are unable to, do the very basic things that would allow them to continue doing transaction in the space in which we operate. This is concerning, Margarita, like you have asked, to the project participants, but also more to us who see this from multiple viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So let me just add to John's contribution with a bit of statistics directly from the PDM. So when we did our PDM, we have there traditional areas where we are working in, which I refer to as the Beiji state, right? Bono, Adamawa, Yobe, and Gombe states. And then we have the other states, which are Benue, Ebony, Kebbi, Niger, and then the FCT. So when we were collecting our data, we collected and separated it. And so when we look at the Beiji states, we have 72% of the respondents actually said they used part of their cash transfers for food. And then there is 34% in the other states. This actually speaks to the security issues that have limited agricultural activities in the Beiji states, because our cash distributions, if you analyze them according to our seasonal calendar, these were actually at a time around harvests where you would expect that probably people would use less money for food consumption, but actually it kind of gave us a different expectation, a different result from our expectation, where 72% of the participants were actually using the money for food. So yeah, this is an indication from the participants that there are issues to do with food security, and then there are issues to do with the cost of producing food. So it is an area where we need to be very innovative and see beyond just issues of climate, but also other factors that can be affecting production of food. Thank you.
So Taffy, either you or Jameson, there's a question in the chat saying social cohesion may not have been a direct objective of our program. However, of your program, I'm curious to know how the multi-stakeholder engagement and sensitization impacted on social cohesion within the communities where we work. If you can also take that.
Jameson, would you like to exercise your rights?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Margarita. And this is a great question, actually. I earlier on mentioned that we, from the very beginning, took stakeholders' engagement very seriously. And for the context of Nigeria, almost every state has a social register. So from the beginning of the program, and I want to give an example of Gombe states, we kind of held a meeting with the state level officials to kind of explain to them what the objective of this program is, how long it will be, what our selection criteria is, and how we can gain in their support in terms of moving forward. This happened quite before we even went to the field. And then it was really a great discussion with them, and they were actually willing to share with us their social register list that we can be able to mine from the list and be able to support the vulnerable people. But also you realize as an active rural resilience activity, there are kind of a criteria that we set out very clearly. Matches some of the selection criteria also matches with what the government social register is, we kind of came to an agreement how we'll move forward with the beneficiaries that we will be targeting. So from the very beginning, we really had a very smooth relationship, and that also transferred to the local government areas and then to the communities as well. So in terms of communicating very clearly what our selection criteria is. And looking at the number, it sounds like 45,000. It's such a big number, but given the number of people that we serve in Nigeria, that is actually a very small number. That requires us to compromise and then come to an agreement with the stakeholders, so that at the end of the day, no one is going to get annoyed on why am I left out? Why is this one getting this support? Why am I missing out? So we took them through this step by step until we were able to get the final beneficiaries list. So yes, very importantly, communication is key to ensure that they understand first and foremost the kind of people that we are looking at, and then how other people are going to miss out and how other people are going to benefit. So very, very important, the engagement with stakeholders and then just clearly communicating. Thank you.
Taffy, thank you very much. And yes, so the importance of the transparency about the communication. I remember you and I spent a bit of time explaining to government partners what our process was and what our criteria were. And we really were incredibly supported. And I think the targeting, the vulnerability of the people that we targeted was also very important because people in the community understood how and who we were trying to help. So thank you very much. As a result of the engagement that Jameson has just described, I think we were also able to get additional participants. So in the original technical proposal, we had intended to use third-party financial service providers. We expected at some point to have to use mobile money operators because we weren't sure about people being able to open bank accounts or if they even wish to. So we had put a significant amount of money, which we will now use to target more farmers. But in the process of this open and transparent communication, we were able to identify people very quickly with the help of the community who needed additional help. I remember a moment in Adamawa where the community identified over 100 women who were IDPs who needed the help, and we were able to catch them through our enumerators and get their details and make sure that we verified them so they could receive the cash transfers. So thank you very much. We have just about 3 minutes left. I'm not sure if I'm not seeing any hands up, or if people want to make any final comments, or if they want to ask the team any questions. Hello, Ndubisi, please go ahead. Can we unmute Ndubisi, please? I don't know how to do it on the mic. Ndubisi, you can go ahead and unmute yourself now. I think we've given access.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if anyone has any more questions, but for me, just listening to this presentation, oftentimes in Nigeria, in the context here, sometimes we say, people see the glory, but they don't know the story. Okay. And I think this presentation has really given us the story of rural resilience and all the challenges and obstacles that it faced, and to surmount these challenges and to achieve on this very challenging program. So I just really want to thank the Rural Resilience team, the Chief of Party, for this insightful webinar on the impact of COVID-19 response program. At Mercy Corps, we're really committed to reducing and alleviating suffering and poverty for the Nigerian citizens. And this project really significantly contributes to that mission. We're very particular about gender equality and inclusion of all our programming. And just looking at the statistics, it really ticks off all the boxes here. It's really reflected. It's great to see the impact of 50,000 Nigerian citizens, 69% of which are women, with these cash transfers and how we've improved the household income and contributed to food security. So it's really exciting. And, I think this is just the beginning. We have really shown that we're able to operate in a fragile context and, really fulfill our mandate of being a humanitarian organization working in the area of early recovery and promoting development. And it's just really exciting. When I see the figures of the financial inclusion and the bank accounts that are open, this is unprecedented. Okay, so really want to thank the RA team. Want to thank all the team members who participated, and of course, this could not have been made possible without the support of finance and operations, HR, and it's just really good to see us come together and fulfill the mandate. When the donor comes to you and says, "Hey, I want you to do this," and you do it, and you not only do it, but you go beyond the expectations. It's really pleasant and welcoming. So just want to say thank you to all of you, and that's it for now. Over to you, Margarita.
Thank you very much. And I see that our time is up today. I want to join in Debisi in saying thank you to the entire team. Everybody has worked incredibly hard. Thank you to all the Feed the Future activities, to USAID, to the other donors who supported us, Taffy and Jameson, thank you for being a huge part of this success. I wish you all a good rest of your week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.